Today we're going to demonstrate how to create your own Landsat time series animation to show what's happening in an area that you actually care about. And so to do that, we are actually going to be using a tool built using Google's Earth Engine, which is a platform that Google has created that actually has a library of satellite images that you can access and you can process. It is powerful because it is a cloud platform that uses all of the different computers to do some remote sensing analysis. This isn't the only way to do this, but this is a quick, powerful way for you to make your own stories. So I'm going to walk you through an example of a place that had a wildfire go through it back in 2002. And it is a place called Babyfoot Lake. And that is located in Southwest Oregon in the United States of America. And when we go to this location, I quickly want to orient you to a couple things. One is you can see the lake itself, which is kind of a greenish color because it is on the shallow side. Importantly, we can see green trees, and we can tell that by the shape, the texture, the tone of those. And importantly, the shadow. You can see that black area that looks just like a tree. That is actually the shadow that's being cast from being illuminated by the sun. Also, I want to point out, you can see these lines, these vertical lines that are in the picture, and those are actually standing trunks of trees that had burned in that 2002 wildfire. The trunks are still standing, but the leaves have all fallen off at this point. And so you're seeing the shadow and the trunk. Very interesting patterns and textures that you can see in the colors. I also want to point out that you can see a trail that actually comes in to the lake. It is this linear sort of feature. And so that's what we can tell with a high resolution image like this. But I'm going to zoom out a little bit to give us some context. And so importantly, what you're seeing happening here is tiles are being created and are being delivered to our web, or to our browser here. And so now that I've zoomed out, I'm a little bit too far. I can't really actually see the lake very well, but I can see some other patterns. So I am just going to demonstrate this. You might zoom in, you might zoom out. There are some nice instructions on how to do this in the lower left corner. But what we want to first define is, what is the time span or the years that we want to look at? Since we're using Landsat data, we have the ability to start in 1984 in many locations, not all, but many locations. And using the whole Landsat archive of satellite records, we should be able to come up to 2019 and the present. So first thing is figuring out what's the time span. So we're just going to go with all of that, of the years there. Importantly, you can look at specific times of year and go through that. What I am going to do is take an average of the whole entire summer months. But I'm actually will change that to focus a little bit more on the July time frame, and then also a little bit more in the August time frame. Just because that's when the fire was happening in this area and got started. You can choose other dates, and you can find interesting patterns. One thing that's really important is you can change the way the satellite image looks. So you might play around and test this out. You can learn more by following this link to look at the different red, green, blue RGB combinations of that imagery. There's also resources that we'll provide to give you more insight into the Landsat satellite imagery and these options, what this swir means. So I am going to come down here and do this red, green, blue, which is similar to our natural color image. Red, green, blue, similar to what our eyes see. So I am going to also just keep this at a default of 5 frames per second, and that actually means it will be showing 5 years every second. So you can slow that down and show 1 year per second, or you can increase that all the way up and you can flip through all 30 years in 1 second. So it depends on what you're trying to do. So I'm going to take that back down to the 5, just because that seems to work well. And then I will define the area that I am interested in looking at. To do that, just make a point, click with my mouse, and just go down and make a square. And you'll end up clicking 5 times to close out that square. And it will automatically send the request in and start processing and producing your preview image of what this looks like through the Landsat combinations of the red, green, and blue satellite wavelengths and bands that are being measured. So we'll give this a little bit of time. If you have a large area, it can take a lot longer. As the instructions say, sometimes you might need to zoom out or you might need to zoom in depending on the speed. And so currently, this can take a little bit of time if you're on a slower internet connection, but give it a little bit of time. Okay, and as this finishes up, what you see is the satellite imagery coming through. And in this case, it's really dark. I can't really see what's going on. And then all of a sudden, it lights up and turns brown. And that is the wildfire that goes through. And in this natural color combination of red, green, blue, our forests in this area, the trees are really tall, and they cast a lot of shadow. They're dense, they're close together. And then when the fire comes through, as we were looking at, it burned up a lot of those trees, and that's what we're seeing in this animation. Now, I recognize this is really blurry because we're zoomed in, and that is the resolution of the Landsat satellite. So one thing that we can do is, let's clear that out a little bit. And I am just going to zoom out 2 levels so that we can get a little larger area, and which is closer to what makes some sense when we're looking at Landsat data. And so depending on where you are, you might need to zoom out, but I'm just going to click through again and create a box of an area of interest at this zoom level 13. Which gives me about 10 kilometers in width going across, which seems to be a pretty good size. So again, this just takes a little bit of time to process through. And so as this finished, we see a similar scene as we did before, but now we go from green across this forested landscape to, in 2002, you can see the effects of the fire turning the landscape brown. And that is the loss of trees. So interesting with this natural color combination, it doesn't show all of that very well. It's all kind of dark. So you might try some other band combinations to be able to show what that actually looks like too. You can go in, and if you just do your save image as, you can then download this as a GIF file, an animated GIF, and be able to work with that and post that up and show other people what you're interested in. If you are inclined, there is a way of actually adding the years to this. It takes an extra step, and I won't go into that right now, but if you are so inclined, feel free to follow that link and learn more. So we have now switched the combinations to make the forests stand out a little bit more, make the whole image a little bit brighter by using a different combination of the shortwave infrared, the near infrared, which we can't see at all. But as you can see, all of a sudden that image that was kind of dark in that natural color, we now can see the same green as that forest. And then you quickly see that red come through, which is the wildfire that burned up that whole area. So you can just see how big 10 kilometers across was really impacted by this fire. So we look forward to seeing what you end up producing yourself by using this experimental tool that gives you the power to do storytelling using the Landsat archive and the Landsat satellite imagery.